Good morning, good morning, good afternoon if you are on the East Coast. I'm on the West in Las Vegas. I'm C.Imani Williams, and I am going to be addressing domestic violence in this video and a little bit of what I went through by sharing an excerpt from my book, ROOTWORK, Triumph Over Trauma. And I'm reading from the story, Insanity Looks Like This. So I was in 1995, very much living life without boundaries. I was very much bi-curious. I was divorced, had been divorced for several years at that point, mother of two young girls. And I was confused and lost, not sure where I was going, knew I was attracted to men and women equally, um, but not ready to come out about being bi-curious. And I had recently had an experience with a young lady, and it scared me. And so, it scared me because it was so doggone dope. But she was entangled, and so I had to leave that alone because no need getting into something new with somebody that's with somebody. So I was intrigued, and I got scared, and I, had stuck my toe out of the closet, and I decided I was going to go all the way back in by marrying a man for a second time, dishonoring what I needed to do to sit with myself and figure out where I was on this sexuality spectrum. Was I just attracted to both sexes, or could I actually be with, not at the same time, but could I be in a relationship with a man and say break up with him and get into a relationship with a woman? Well, of course you can, but what one needs to do is put time in between that and a whole lot of thought and understand who we are, and do so living with boundaries. And I did not do that. I married him very quickly, and it was a mess. And you have to remember that we attract our own inventory. I couldn't see his issues because I couldn't look in the mirror to see mine. If you're not looking at yourself, you can't look at somebody else. Not really. So a little piece of this, and you can get the book. You can grab it from Amazon if you prefer a signed copy. I am all out right now of my hardcovers, but I am expecting another shipment in March 14th. So you can get on the pre-order reserve list for a signed hard copy by going to C.ImaniWilliams.com. C.ImaniWilliams.com. All right. Insanity looks like this. In 1996, I was 32 years old and insane. I had fled my home under Cool Cat, my daddy's directive. I would be staying with him and his former wife on a temporary basis. I had left my abusive ex-husband after Cool Cat insisted that it wasn't safe for me to stay in my home. Only the house was in my name, so I needed to know my ex wouldn't become a squatter and essentially cost me more money. Cool Cat allowed me to bring my girls, his hearts, and try and piece my life back together. The thing is, the abuser was also a stalker. He didn't want me, but he was going to be damned if someone else had me. The psychological games this cat put me through were satanic. I feared for his patients, many of whom were seniors. He was an RN with an evil streak. I also feared him stealing a scalpel from the ER and slitting my throat in my sleep. He hated me, That was clear about a month after we did the quick run from Michigan to Ohio, exchanging vows. God sent a sign which I chose to ignore. Although the universe did everything in her power to keep me from marrying this cat, I failed to acknowledge the bumps in our plans. I simply worked harder to become Mrs. Williams. I should mention here that I only knew him 2 months before we made it legal. I had recently dipped my toe into gay clubs. I wasn't close with any black lesbians yet. And at my spot where I housed until 2 a.m., I was a regular. The club was black owned and had recently attracted more gay black men. The crowd was still predominantly straight. I would set my work schedule to start at noon on Fridays. My babysitter was a few houses down the street. House music and dancing are a form of spiritual release. The night we met, I was hanging with JK. He was going to remarry soon, so it would essentially be the last time we hung out and danced. I really don't have any friends where I hang out with them and they're married, not straight ones anyway. I was hanging with JK, and I can't remember if my ex offered me a drink or not. I do recall his arrogant remark about my phone number and how he remarked he would be the last to get it. On our first date, I met him for lunch. I had 2 glasses of wine. The first time we hang out, I'm meeting you somewhere and it will take place during the day. Our second date was to a nice restaurant in the Fisher Building in Midtown Detroit. He picked me up. The Jeep's top was off, and it was a beautiful summer night. My girls were excited. Mommy, it's time for you to date somebody. Go out and have a good time. He laid it on thick. Every time I excused myself, he stood up. The sisters at the table next to us were on a date night, and there were like 5 couples. The sisters went in telling my ex how much of a gentleman he was. Then they chastised the brothers they were with for not being more romantic. I was in a one of a kind Ife African inspired swing dress. I had modeled this one in an African themed fashion show. A ball fade and some big ass Afrocentric earrings completed my look. I was adorable. I excused myself a final time while he said he was going to pay the bill. I walked back upstairs and he was in the hallway. He touched my elbow and guided me towards the nearest exit. And we heard, Sir, sir, you need to pay your bill. No, this mofo didn't. He mumbled it off and gave the guy a card, which took care of the bill. I don't think he left a tip either. All these signs I ignored. And I'll stop there. And let's get into a little bit about what an abusive personality looks like, because unlike me, I want to encourage you to spot the signs. I do now, but that night I did not because I was on my own thing. 1, he made a gigantic show of standing up every time I went to use the restroom, which was a couple of times. A big deal. Now we love chivalry, ladies. We do. That's a sign of a gentleman, etc., etc. But not when it comes with an underlying or undertone of narcissism. He absolutely got off on those sisters at the next table, complimenting him and praising him, and then putting their guys down for not doing the same. It's not how we handle that. They could have had a 10-person conversation at their table. There were 5 couples. Like, that was kind of cool. You ever think about doing that? But you don't have to call the fellas out. So number 1 was him eating up all of that praise. Number 2, which I didn't include in that, was I didn't care for the way he spoke to our servers, nor do I care for the way he spoke to the waitresses. Now, don't get it twisted. Like, I like my food a certain way, and I don't eat out a lot because of that. But I'm going to ask nicely, and I'm going to put it in with my order. Can I please have X, Y, and Z on the side? And can I have a little extra dish of ranch dressing? So let's say that. And I'm going to ask for it, with my order. If it doesn't come with my order, I'm just going to put in a gentle reminder with my waitress. Because I understand that people that cook your food, a whole bunch of things go on in kitchens, behind the scenes, and we don't need to see all. We don't need to not see it. We don't need to provoke people to be nasty when they are preparing our food. So I'd already kind of said, when he spoke to the waitress in a rude manner. The other thing that should have been a super huge sign was him leaving out without paying the bill. Who does that? The man made nice money. It was unnecessary. So to me, that again was part of the narcissism. I can dine here, but I don't have to pay to do so. Um, and had that worker from the restaurant not come out hollering at us in the gilded hallways of the Fisher Building, where if you've been to Detroit and you've had an opportunity to visit the Fisher, it has awesome acoustics, very high ceilings, and so you get an echo. So his calling out um, was rather loud, and it echoed, and it was as embarrassing as hell. But I ignored all of that. I ignored it all. I just said, must have been a misunderstanding to myself. We didn't discuss it once we got back in the Jeep. None of that. Um, and part of that was because I wanted to um, see the night as magical. My girls encouraged me to go out, my daughters, they said, Mommy, it's time for you to date again. He clearly had, um, he was employed. He, talked like he was good at his job and like he cared about, his patients. But if a person treats wait staff poorly, and certainly if they attempt to skip out on the bill, these are signs that there are some underlying things, and these are red flags that if we are out with said person, we should not ignore. And again, I was running from myself. I was not putting boundaries in place other than our first date took place during the daytime. And, I hold to that. But that's all I held to. And so if you are in a situation and it is new, I really encourage you to take your time. And this is for the ladies and the fellas both. You know, um, ask the questions that you want answers to, because you have a plan for yourself that says the left side of my list are things I can accept from a person. The things on the right side of the sheet that I've listed are things, they're deal breakers. I'm not doing that. And hold to it. I would love some comments for those who have experienced similar, for those who feel like they might be seeing some things that they don't like in a person. We have to talk about these things. There's no reason for people to make the massive mistakes that I made because I refused to set boundaries and pay attention to signs. Don't do that. Costs a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of energy getting out of it, because he was also a stalker. So he wouldn't just go away after our short-lived matrimony. And don't be marrying folks you don't know. Number one, number one. They shouldn't even get that close to you for you to contemplate that. But that is what insanity looks like when we act out, when we don't know ourselves, when we don't do the work that we need to do to get to the next step, and we have the audacity to want to involve someone else in that when we are drawing our own energy. So if we're chaotic and insane and all over the map, that is what we're going to attract. So now you got a bigger mess. Slow it down. All right. One love. C.Imani Williams. Um, my link is in the bio. You can grab any number of my freebies that are available. I have one out right now on managing grief and loss for trauma survivors, another on self-publishing and avoiding self-publishing mistakes that are costly. You can grab that. And you can also grab the one on managing microaggressions, those pesky racist things that, when they happen in the workplace, put our livelihood at risk. Get you some tips for your toolbox. Those are all freebies. And I want to continue this discussion on domestic and intimate partner violence and avoiding it by knowing who you are. Peace and love. And shout out to Love Enlightens for my Valentine's Day gift, my tea. There are several. This one says, I'm perfect. Another says, expression beats depression. And I believe in that as a creative arts, holistic wellness life coach and author. Know yourself. All right. One love.